What's up, all my fight fans? So, with all this news with Floyd Mayweather potentially fighting Conor McGregor, I was going back, looking up some Floyd Mayweather stuff, hearing him talk, and seeing some of his videos, looking up some interviews and whatnot. And it made me think, guys. It made me want to have this discussion with you guys because I know for over the years when Floyd Mayweather was in his prime, we always like to discuss, is he the best ever? Because I know he likes to proclaim himself. He is by far the greatest legend, greatest boxer, greatest fighter of all time. That is not just including this generation, it is the past generation, it is the past generation, the next generation. He is trying to proclaim himself as the greatest to ever do it. Now I ask you guys, is he? Because I know what my opinion is. My opinion is no, he is not. And I'll tell you why. In his early days, he was such a dominant champion. He was a dominant fighter. Oh my God. I look back at that Diego Corrales fight and I'm just like completely wowed. The fact that how many times he was able to drop him, his speed, his power, everything. He was just a perfect fighter that night. Perfect. And throughout his career, as he moved on up, he still looked completely dominant. He still looked amazing. His skills, his shoulder roll, his defense was unbelievable against some of the best fighters out there that he went against. Fighters or boxers, whatever you would like to call them. He definitely showed a lot. But my thing is, reason why I feel like he is not the best ever. Don't get me wrong, he is definitely on that list of one of the greatest. 100%, can't take that away from him. But if you take away the pay-per-views, take away the pay-per-view numbers, because we like to discuss that. Take away the amount of money, because that's something we like to discuss. Because eventually, I'm sorry, but 10 years, 20 years from now, no one's going to remember how much money Floyd Mayweather made to face any fighter. No one's going to remember how much pay-per-view buys it sold. The only thing that we're ever going to remember is who you fought, when you fought him, how you fought him, and how, did you do in general. That's literally all we're going to remember. We never discuss about how much money Muhammad Ali made, how much Sugar Ray Leonard made, how much Oscar De La Hoya made, how much Manny Pacquiao made. We never discuss about how much their pay-per-view buys were. Does anybody remember the amount of buys for a Sugar Ray Leonard and a Tommy Hearns? Or a Oscar De La Hoya and Felix Trinidad? Or how much money they got in those fights? No, we don't remember. Why? Because we do not care. Why? Because it's not important. It doesn't create legacy. It doesn't create legends. That doesn't. You were able to get that much money. 100% respect that. 100% respect the fact that you were able to get so much money in your career. You definitely deserve it. I honestly feel some athletes are a little bit overpaid, but nonetheless, that's a different topic, different story, different day. But respect, got that much money, more power to you. But that does not make you the greatest of all time. That's one of the reasons. Another reason is, who did he fight and when did he fight them? He fought the who's who. There's no denying that. He fought the who's who. He fought guys such as Zab Judah. He fought guys such as Shane Mosley, Oscar De La Hoya, Manny Pacquiao, obviously, Miguel Cotto. He fought Ricky Hatton, Victor Ortiz, Robert Guerrero, Andre Barrow. The list goes on and on about fighting really great and really good fighters. No denying that. But there was always just this, almost seemed like, I don't want to say afraid, but just that step back where he just did not want to go in there with someone who had the potential of beating him. Or going against that fighter that he did face in a more even playing field, if you will. And what I mean by that is both of them being at their best when they were their best. Prime example is what I can think of is Oscar De La Hoya. When he went in there, he went against Felix Trinidad. Felix Trinidad was undefeated. He was on top of his game. He was young. He was in his prime. He was definitely just the top level at that time. At that time, he was definitely the one of the biggest fighters that Oscar De La Hoya could face. He went against him. Shane Mosley, another one, prime, roughly about the same age, I believe, right there. But yeah, they both were in their prime. They both were on the top of their game, both undefeated, both on that pound for pound list, ready to go, ready to rock it. He went in there against them. When, be that as it may, when Oscar De La Hoya went up to middleweight to face Bernard Hopkins, he did lose against Felix Sturm. He won that fight, but I feel he lost. All due respect to that. But nonetheless, still, he could have took that title, could have said, hey, I won the middleweight championship. That's it. Nope. What did he do? He went up and faced the middleweight king, Bernard Hopkins, in his prime. Like, I know he had some losses, but he was just straight up dominant. There was no one touching Bernard Hopkins when he was a middleweight. Nobody. And he went in there against him. At the end of his career, you look at who his last three opponents were. The pound for pound king, Floyd Mayweather, and then the new pound for pound king, Manny Pacquiao. And that was done. End of career. Now, I know a lot of those he lost. But it doesn't matter the fact that you lost those, because we don't remember those. We don't remember about how many people Muhammad Ali lost to, or Sugar Ray Leonard lost to. We don't remember these losses that some of these fighters had. We remember who they went in there against and how they did, and the fact that they put everything on the line. So now, after I gave you that example, there's a lot you can't say that Floyd Mayweather was able to do. You know, when he went in there with Shane Mosley was way older, had not fought in over a year and a half. His last fight prior to that fight was in 2008, I believe. Oh, no, excuse me. Was in 2009 against Antonio Margarito in January. Then he didn't fight again until he fought Floyd Mayweather in May 2010. That's way past his prime. Way too long to be fighting. I mean, not to have a fight. And it was much more older. So he was not in his prime. He fought Ricky Hatton, who only really had two really decent notable opponents. I believe it was Tatsu, excuse me if I'm getting that name wrong. He fought a Luis Collazo, and he fought even a Jose Luis Castillo. Fought him at 140, and then he fought one guy at 147. And somehow he was able to get in there with the pound for pound king, Floyd Mayweather. Would you say that's a more valuable opponent? Not necessarily. You know, he went in there against Juan Manuel Marquez at a catch weight that he didn't even meet. He wanted Juan Manuel Marquez to go up to 147, or no, excuse me, I believe it was 144, 145-ish, and he couldn't meet it. Floyd Mayweather couldn't meet it. Couldn't get down to that weight. Paid the penalty fee, and they still fought. Marquez never fought above 135 at that time. Never. At that time, he was always at 135, always a lightweight. You know, that was when Floyd Mayweather came back out of retirement in 2009. They fought in September. He could have challenged a Miguel Cotto. He could have challenged a Floyd Mayweather. A Shane Mosley at that time. So there was other opponents out there that he could have challenged, but instead he called out a guy at lightweight. And that's where I felt a little like, oh, whoa, what are you doing, dude? This guy's not even in your division. There's that. Then, of course, the most famous one, Manny Pacquiao. Waiting 6 long years to face somebody. Now, I know all this allegations about steroids and about this and about that, and there were just so many nitpicky things. Very, very nitpicky. And at the end of the day, I'm sorry, guys, I don't believe Manny Pacquiao was on steroids. Innocent to proven guilty. Unless there's some kind of evidence out there that shows Manny Pacquiao was specifically on steroids. I don't want to hear about his body frame. I don't want to hear about what he was able to do in the ring and how he was able to jump up and down in weight in some ways. I don't want to hear that. Show me proof, evidence that says 100% Manny Pacquiao used steroids. No, there is none of that out there. Nothing. Nada. You ain't going to find any of that. But that's what prevented a lot of that fight from happening in 2008, 2010, 2009, 10, 11, 12, 13. We didn't get it until it was 2015. 6 long years later, with Manny Pacquiao having 2 losses, one very controversial and one very devastating against Juan Manuel Marquez and Timothy Bradley. So that's what, to me, unfortunately doesn't make Floyd Mayweather the best of all time. Was he the smartest of all time? Absolutely. You cannot find another smarter fighter than Floyd Mayweather. He was able to manage to duck and dodge. I don't want to say, He was able to really get it out of the way, dodge a lot of the opponents. And, put it that way. He was able to duck a lot of the opponents at that right time where they would have gave him more trouble, where they would have caused maybe a little bit more damage than he wanted to. He was able to play it safe, where he was able to make the most money, take the less risk, have all the odds on his favor, and definitely be able to come out the victory. So I give it to him for that. For being a very smart fighter, hands down the best ever. But unfortunately, you cannot do that if you want to be considered the best ever overall. You got to take chances. Manny Pacquiao was right there waiting for him back in 2009. That's like, hey, let's do this. Let's do this. Let's make this happen. He could have done it then. He didn't want to. I know Shane Mosley wanted Floyd Mayweather after Floyd Mayweather fought De La Hoya. Could have done it then. Didn't happen. Rinky Wright, we all remember how great of a defensive fighter Rinky Wright was. Rinky Wright was very dangerous. He was actually the one that put Mosley, took Mosley, didn't take him out as a knockout, but defeated Mosley twice to get his star power going, and had some really good victories over Felix Trinidad, Jermaine Taylor, and so forth. So that was another one. I remember watching that fight where Rinky Wright faced Ike Corte. He actually called out. He wanted the winner of De La Hoya and Floyd Mayweather. Floyd Mayweather won. No rematch. Back in 2009, Sergio Martinez, who recently was coming off some great victories over Paul Williams, and then he even got another victory over Kelly Pavlik in the middleweight division, had openly said that he would have no problem dropping down to 150 to face Floyd Mayweather again. And I mentioned that at the end of Oscar De La Hoya's career, who'd he face? He went against the pound for pound king Floyd Mayweather, and then he went against the new pound for pound king, because at that time Floyd Mayweather retired, in Manny Pacquiao. Well, we look at who Floyd Mayweather faced. We look at Manny Pacquiao 6 years later. Andre Berto, which to this day still does bother me, because Andre Berto had lost to Robert Guerrero and Victor Ortiz, and Floyd Mayweather beat those two already. So how did he manage to get in there with Andre Berto instead of another young up-and-coming fighter such as Amir Khan at the time, a Danny Garcia at the time, maybe even a Keith Thurman at the time? I know Errol Spence was kind of making some noise at that time as well. So there was all this other potential of other fighters that he could have went toe-to-toe with, but instead he went against Andre Berto. And then somehow is able to break that 49-0 record that I believe Rocky Marciano held, and became 50-0, the first ever 50-0 against an MMA fighter, Conor McGregor. Tell me what you guys think in the comments. Do you agree what I think, that Floyd Mayweather isn't the best ever? Like, subscribe, hit the notification button, and I'll see you guys in the next video.